Joining me now is Teresa Lusk. Teresa is a speaker, life coach, television host, has her master's degree in counseling. One of the questions that folks are struggling with around this such a polarizing society, especially as it relates to politics, is political anxiety. Is it taking a toll on me? Is it taking a toll on my mental health? We'll talk about that. Teresa, welcome to the program.
Hey, thank you so much for having me on.
Well, let's just start with that question. Is this what's happening in our society today around politics, anxiety? What's happening?
Well, I think a lot of individuals can attest to the fact that so much political tension is actually causing stress on our lives. There's so much division, disagreement. I think people even kind of walk on eggshells a little bit around certain family members, certain friends, hoping that the topic doesn't arise about your favorite candidate or your least favorite candidate, Tim. And so, and then, you're bombarded with social media, with people's opinions. It's gotten to the point where they've allowed the politics to become their identity instead of the tool that it's supposed to be.
Yeah, no, it's true. Now, let's kind of dive into this a little bit. I mean, let's trace it back, as it relates to politics in particular, right? Because certainly there's been political animosity for years and generations going back. I mean, shoot. I mean, I watched Hamilton the musical. I know some of our history, right?
Right.
And Aaron Burr, man. The guy shot. I mean, my goodness. I mean, we're talking about pulling guns out. So, but I would say recently there's certainly been a shift. There's been can you trace this back to any time, any point where it really turned, it really changed to the way it is now? I remember talking to, we had former Washington Governor Dan Evans on the program where he talked about when he was also a senator for Washington. He said back in his day, you'd have big disagreements, but then at the end of the day, you'd go out and have dinner together. Where
right.
That's not the case anymore. Where people just, as you stated, they're breaking their relationships with friends and family because of it.
Yeah, I do believe that social media really has just provided such a larger platform, and the bombarding of negativity. And, in today's, society, we're taught that everything is offensive, unfortunately. And so many people are grabbing on to those ideas that if you disagree with me, it's offensive, and you hate me, you don't like me. You don't like who I am. You don't like my group of people. And it just becomes so personal. I think in times before, people just understood we are going to disagree, but we're also going to agree to disagree. And you're right, we're going to go have dinner, and tomorrow we'll go at it again. But at the end of the day, it's just your opinion, and this is my opinion. But I still see you as a human being. I don't have to push you away, break up with you, unfriend you, and basically cut you out of my life. And so it's a really unfortunate situation, but it is happening. I know that we've heard of this for several years now. This has been going on. And so I think if people become aware this time around, because we're not too far off from the next, huge, presidency, voting for the next president again, and it's going to happen again, and so we just have to pay attention and start asking ourselves questions as individuals. We are in charge of our own reaction. We can get information from media, and just before reacting to it, we've got to ask ourselves, did that post, did that news outlet just try to form my opinion? Where can I just grab the facts or information and then leave the rest out? And instead of it being, this is who I am, this is part of me, and you don't like who I am because of the way that I vote. We're going to disagree, right? We vote based on our convictions and what we believe about many different things. But at the end of the day, if our society here in America doesn't take individual ownership, we're only going to see this this great divide even in a greater measure.
Now, can you trace some of the place that we're in? Is this some of the work that you've done? Certainly, we've at some point, was it the mid 2010s or so, where kind of like where outrage culture, right? We became like there. Certainly, we've seen this, the cancel culture, outrage culture. Everyone's offended by everything all the time, every day. Have you ever traced some of this stuff out to where we are today?
Started between 2008, 2010, around that time. That's when things really started getting even more divisive than they, already were, because there's always been some form of division, right? Disagreement. Maybe it's not been so heated, but absolutely. I mean, it's happened. Again, I think, I don't mean to keep beating this, but media has a lot to do with it. It has a lot to do with it.
In what way?
Was constantly bombarding you. So let's say that you take a group of people and they're already being trained. Let's take the kids, right? The kids are being trained, maybe not to love their country or to be offended about it, et cetera. And so now you grab onto, you follow pages that really kind of confirm and affirm those feelings, and so they intensify. Now you're angry. Now, opinions are just being blurted out of your mouth and out of my mouth. And so we have to become aware, not because we're trying to step on people's toes, but again, to separate, this is not my identity. This is simply a tool. I want the country to move in this direction, so I'm going to vote. I'm going to be educated, not moved by emotion, not moved by the morning news that I just heard, not moved by the social media posts, but by information that I have actually been able to research. And believe it or not, research different things, not just our favorite, news media outlet. And so those things are important. We Americans, we're smart people. We just have to go back to using the intelligence that God gave us and begin to use it to formulate opinions and to learn how to deal with people that we disagree with.
Yeah, no, it's good. You talk about around that time frame, 2008, 2010, of course, social media, that's when that really took off in that time frame, iPhones. But Pedro, this was before. What was the year that you stopped talking politics? Well, remember, Pedro told me he kind of just stopped talking politics because he wanted to, he wanted to talk about peace and love. And what was the year that you stopped?
Well, remember that I used to write jokes for Jay Leno.
Yeah.
So I used to post the jokes on social media, and at the beginning, everybody was just having fun with the jokes and blah, blah, blah. But later, people started just piling on some of them, some disagreements, and then I started noticing some fights on the threads, and I was like, this is just a silly joke on both sides. I didn't get it for the, Democrats, Republicans, or whoever. So I was like, okay, enough. If this is going to cause a fight between my friends, what's the point? And then it must have been 2012, 2013, around that time. And that was it. Never again.
Okay. So what do you think about that?
Me personally, I just think that there are some things that are important to me as an individual, not so much as the representative of the mental health field or the life coaching field or speaking, et cetera. For me, I don't necessarily think that you have to hide your convictions. You don't have to hide those things. It's how you go about them. If I share something, for me, it's for educating, creating awareness for people. I don't care if they agree with it or not. You don't have to agree with it, but you can become aware of it. And that goes with information from both sides. There's things that obviously on the side that I lean on, I disagree with some things, and I obviously disagree with the other side. So for me, it's not about, and I personally do try to avoid when somebody posts something and it's got language that it's meant to incite anger. That is what, where we need to be wise at is, are we just trying to start a fight because we want to be heard that our political view is the right way? That's when things start to break down. But the truth is, Tim, that even when you're not trying to start a fight, there are people that are always going to be ready to disagree and start a fight, continue the fight, and end the fight. So it's just a matter of, why are you doing it? Is it important? Is it educational? What are you accomplishing with it? And you know, you just have to choose, what am I willing? There's a cost to everything. I'm not a fan of always, you know, keeping to myself everything. I actually appreciate what Pedro did, where he, you know, said, I'm just not even going to be involved in that. That's great. We need the peace. You know, some people need to be able to take that position. And then there's also people who need to take the position of, information is okay, but causing reaction, causing fights, causing arguments, that part is not okay.
I wanted to ask you, there's an interesting article that Barry Weiss posted today in the Free Press. If you're familiar with Barry Weiss, he's an independent journalist, used to be a columnist for the New York Times for many years, and, you know, is known as a, you know, barely, you know, pretty moderate, kind of libertarian type of person. But the article, the title of the article was "Why the Mental Health of Liberal Girls Sank First and Fastest." A very fascinating. You should read this article. Very fascinating. The subtitle was, "We are a decade into the largest epidemic of adolescent mental illness ever recorded. It's time we started treating social media like automobile and firearms." And then it went on and in great detail described how girls who are liberals by far are more depressed than anyone else in our country. What do you make of that?
Well, it wouldn't surprise me. I don't know that I read the entirety of that article, but I know that, unfortunately, when you deal with some thoughts and beliefs that you live in a country that's just, you know, awful, and that you're somehow you've bought into, you know, you live in this place that's completely racist, and that anything that we would like to, hey, impose the laws to protect the American people, that those are things that they're victims of. And so it creates this, I have enemies all around me kind of mentality. And obviously that's not correct. You know, we still live in a great country. We have laws for a reason, and there are things that the younger generations, unfortunately, are being just influenced by so much stuff that is just anti-America and anti-peace and anti-God, and we're seeing the effects of it. And when you have conservative girls, I'm not saying that they don't have their own ideas that aren't necessarily healthy, but usually conservative girls are more tied to Christian families or families of faith, and so there's a little bit more training in that area when it comes to faith and convictions, and so you're going to see in that. There's just something about living in a country where you think your country is almost an enemy. Absolutely, it's going to cause depression and anxiety. If you rise up to speak against anything that some of these kids have subscribed to and believed that is part of who they are and part of their identity, well, absolutely, you're going to get that kind of internal anxiety and internal depression.
Essay written by a progressive journalist, Jill Filipovich, who says, "I'm increasingly convinced that there are tremendously negative long-term consequences, especially to young people, coming from this reliance on the language of harm and accusations that things one finds offensive are deeply problematic or even violent. Just about everything researchers understand about resilience and mental well-being suggests that people who feel like they are the chief architects of their own life, to mix metaphors that they captain their own ship, not that they are simply being tossed around by an uncontrollable ocean, are vastly better off than people whose default position is victimization, hurt, and a sense that life simply happens to them and they have no control over their response." It's interesting to think about that. And then in light of, and I don't know if you're a person of faith, but, in light of, if you're a person of faith, you people who trust in Jesus, trust in God, would actually identify more with the progressive on this side, right? That we aren't the chief architects of our own life. What do you make of this?
Well, I agree. I am a person of faith. I am a believer, but I do see that. I mean, you do see that when you have a person of faith who believes in Jesus, who believes in the Lord, again, you don't start to think that you're your own creator. You don't start making up your own rules. We typically will use the Bible as our direction, that which leads us. So when you don't have that faith compass to lead you, there is an internal thing that happens. You do begin to lead your own way, and we weren't created to lead our own way. We were created to be led by the Lord, and I get that not everybody's going to agree with that, and that's fine, but we're seeing the consequence of turning into more of a godless culture, rejecting truth, rejecting that. And so it affects every bit of our lives, including the political thing, including our young kids going away from having faith. And so you get to see this crazy effect going on in more than just one area. So, I mean, I agree. You could pay attention to that and go, yeah, that this is affecting our younger generations. And unfortunately, there are the political sides. It's seen. I'm not saying that there are Democrats that don't believe in God, but technically, when you go to the left, you see a little more acceptance of we don't need faith, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not saying that the right isn't getting there too, because there are some things going on. So you can pay attention and see the patterns, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, there's some issues on the right. There's no question about that. There's some significant problems. It makes if there's one thing that I think is true, it's if we think a political party is going to save us, I got a bridge in Alaska to sell you. A poll taken a couple years ago called Dueling Realities found that 80% of Republicans believe the Democratic Party has been taken over by socialists, and while 80% of Democrats believe the GOP has been taken over by racists. Can you talk about this?
Yeah, I read that, and I saw that, and I kind of chuckled at it. I just thought it was a little funny, because the truth is that in a micro level, I see it. In a macro level, I see it. And I see that's exactly the narrative of each party. We are seeing that. I mean, the thing is, once again, I have a lot of friends on the opposite side of where I vote, and they're good people. And we disagree on a lot of things, but they're good people. And a lot of them are really good to me. And so I think if we begin to just give that person, their value back instead of looking at them, then we won't have to, let me just say this. To say that I've never been upset over some kind of political issue would be a lie. I have my own convictions, my own beliefs, et cetera, et cetera. So obviously I have been frustrated by the opposite side and even my own. But at the end of the day, if we can just give that person back their humanity and love them and say, you know what, aside from that, they are human beings. There's a lot of people that don't believe that, I'm a racist or a socialist. So, we just have to bring back the humanity level of things. And it takes ownership, Tim. We have to do it It's not going to happen. It feels like such a problem that will never be solved. And sometimes I actually get a little overwhelmed myself looking at the situation and going, will we ever get past this? But I think if we begin to take ownership, because we as individuals, as Americans, if we begin to take our own ownership and saying, okay, enough. I'm going to, yes, have my beliefs, but they're not going to become something, it's not going to be a weapon against the person. And I can look at my social media list and look at a bunch of people that vote differently than I do. I can still look at them and go, I love them. They're good people. They are trying to do something good in the world. And so it brings back the humanity aspect of them, and that tears down some of that frustration that's built up.
Yeah. And it's, one of the big questions, you kind of alluded to this, but I'd be curious to have you, kind of walk this out. But, everyone has their own convictions and values, and as well they should, right? And so the problem gets when we try to change someone else's conviction and value to be mine, conviction and value. And the other part is, how do we, still maintain relationship with someone who has a different conviction value? Because whatever topic we're talking about, there's going to be a certain level of, importance on a particular topic, right? I mean, there's certain things that one side or one person on one side is going to say that's just too far for me, right? I can't believe like you would even consider that, because that's, in my view, that is crossing a line. Sure. How do you go about this?
Well, I've just learned, and even through my own coaching and counseling and all of that, that with people, you can inform them, you can educate them, you can share your heart, you can share your mind, you can share why you made up your mind the way that you do. And what I have found, Tim, is that people have decided what is most important to them. And so this is where we split, right, between parties, mostly the left and right. You may say, well, pro-life is very important to me, and social justice issues, as if, social justice issues wasn't important to the other side. And so you just have to kind of understand that everybody has chosen what's more important to them. And that's hard to accept sometimes, because you say, well, but how can you not? The exact verbiage that you just used. How can you even vote like this? At the end of the day, we have to understand we will not change anybody's mind. We can inform. And one of the things about learning to be a healthy individual is learning to just respect the person for where they are. They may not be able to understand why your conviction is so great in a certain area. And so you have to be okay with that. You can talk about it, describe it, explain it. And at the end of the day, if I find myself trying to force them to accept my view, the problem is me. I'm not God. I can't change your mind. I can pray. I can pray for my own wisdom as well, because I'm not always right, even though I want to be. Humanity wants to be right. And so we just have to be aware of that. Again, bringing it back to the perspective of you're dealing with human beings. You're dealing with human beings. We are all made in God's image, so we have to remember that part right there. And so it's just absolutely, especially in this season where everything has hit the high when it comes to hate and intolerance and frustration and a lot of godlessness in many ways as well. But at the end of the day, bringing it back.
Teresa, tell us about your work and maybe how folks could connect with you.
Well, I am in the McKinney, Texas area, but I am happy to connect with anybody on social media at Teresa Lusk Show. You can go to my website or find me on social media on Instagram, Facebook. And, I do the life coaching, I do speaking, and my goal is to just help people, find the best version of themselves. I really believe God put purpose in people, and I want to help people find that. And so that excites me, and if that means bringing peace to you by helping you deal with the political stress, then so be it.
Yeah, and there are some other things that you talk about your life coach work that you do.
So I really just help people come up with what are some difficulties. I've had people in my office, they go in there and they're like, hey, I've been pretty depressed. I'm not as passionate as I used to be about my work. And so we just start digging in there. We find out what's going on, what's changed, were there some things that you didn't pay attention to that happened. And all of a sudden we can identify that part and begin to break it down and figure out, okay, is there something that's changed? Is it you? Are you still supposed to be here? Because life goes in seasons, and sometimes there's changes. I help people with anxiety, depression, people who have passion to maybe start a business. Maybe they're already entrepreneurs and businessmen and women, and they just want to deal with their thinking, with things that get in the way from growing and moving to the next level.
And what are some common themes that you've seen in the life coach work that you've done?
Yeah, a lot of it is their business, women and men just trying to find the passion once again for their business of why I love doing this. I was producing a lot of work. I was happy to wake up in the morning, and now I can't seem to find that joy and that passion. Some of it is just dealing with, am I even taking the right path? Am I supposed to be doing something different? Some of it is just women dealing with past issues. Women deal with a whole lot of self-esteem situations, and sometimes we got to go back to, where did you learn to form these thoughts about yourself? Why do they still seem like truths today? Aging issues. Some people, especially women, I'm too old now to accomplish this, accomplish that. Okay, let's find the truth and let's build on that.
And what are the common threads that you've seen throughout all of those things? Are there some common threads?
The threads are that people get to a point where they stop believing that they're capable of the next level. That maybe because they don't seem to have passion for something, that's not where they're supposed to be anymore. One of the things that I deal with a lot is grief, believe it or not. Grief is one of the big deals that people somehow don't even realize that they experience grief, and it actually puts a stop to their development. And it goes for grief in marriage. It can be in business. It can be in ministry if they're in ministry, different areas. But grief is a big one, believe it or not. I think a lot of people go through a level of grief and don't even realize it or understand it.
Mm. Do you see, say, a pattern, just as people get older in the age, that just start to lose passion for things, or maybe it's just a kind of a change of kind of view of life where they're not as certainly physiologically. I'm not speaking physiologically, but just like mentally about, hey, I'm just content. I'm content in certain things, and I don't necessarily need to work at breakneck speed anymore.
Yeah, it varies. Believe it or not, even the younger generations actually go through this. So it's not always an age thing. Sometimes it's a, where am I in life and what just hit me that I didn't realize or recognize. There's a lot of that. Again, it points back to the grief. And so, of course, I have the individuals that come in and they're just like, I don't know. I'm older. I can't remember things the way I used to. So that's one of the disqualifications for their passion, that they say, I don't have a passion because I'm worried about my memory. I'm worried that I don't have the same level of energy. And, in life, we just have to adjust to the changes. There are changes, we adjust to them, but we don't stop living, and we don't stop grabbing on to the purpose that God put on the inside of us. It's important to keep finding and pursuing the thing that brings you excitement and passion and purpose. And it's okay to say, you know what, I was passionate about this one thing for 20 years, and all of a sudden I'm not, and that may not be a grief. It may just be that it's time to shift into something else. I've seen that in my own life where I was doing something very specific. Now I'm kind of, doing something new doors, new territory. And it's great. That keeps you living. It keeps you hoping. It keeps you, having vision for something. And so it's important to keep looking at life and saying, okay, I will ride this out in this season, but the moment I start feeling uncomfortable, pay attention and say, okay, what is going on in my life right now?
That's good. Very good wisdom, very good advice. Teresa, a joy to have you on the program today. This has been Teresa Lusk. And if you want to connect with her, again, tell folks how they can connect with you.
At Teresa Lusk Show on the social media platforms, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram.
Hey, I thought you were telling people to get off social media, Teresa.
Well, only when they come visit me. Then they can go on there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Take care.